I don't want to alarm anyone, but I think I may have good news about Magic. Lorwyn Eclipsed is looking to be an incredible set. Of course, I've been looking forward to it as one of the few Universes Within products this year, but I think it really sunk its hooks into me when I started looking over the cards. Its design goes against the grain of a lot of sets I've had issues with in recent years. So today, I want to talk a little bit about all the reasons I have to love this set. Let's get into it. First of all, from a mechanical perspective, Lorwyn Eclipsed shows a lot of care in design. Mark Rosewater talked about this process in Total Eclipsed of the Sun. The design team used the original Lorwyn block as the base. They wanted to return to the mechanics as much as the plane itself. They started by listing out all the different mechanics and focuses that the plane showed off its first time around. Next, they divided the list into 3 categories: things they should do, things they shouldn't do, and things they should consider. This categorization wasn't done based on vibes or first impressions. They gave a detailed breakdown on each mechanic and why they ended up where they did. Chroma suffered from inconsistency. It counted colored pips of cards, but sometimes it cared about the ones in your hand, other times the battlefield, and occasionally the graveyard. It had a great idea in caring about color, but it was too complex for the payoff. This mechanic was much more streamlined and popular when revisited later as Devotion. On the other hand, creature types mattering was immensely important to Lorwyn, and it was well executed. It wouldn't feel like the same setting at all if this didn't make a return. After deciding on what could return as is, there was work done to repurpose and update mechanics that fit, but previously had clunky implementation. Champion was a mechanic from original Lorwyn that required you to temporarily exile a creature of a certain type as the championing creature entered the battlefield. The idea was that this mechanic would force you to have a critical mass of a chosen creature type in order to make it work. There were some issues with this implementation though. The creature with Champion could not be used without setup. They were limited in their ability to stabilize as late-game bombs because they needed to exile something that was already on the board. Because they were removing the things that they were championing, they were also problematic from a tempo perspective. Maybe most fatally, if the champion cost wasn't paid, the big bad creature was sacrificed. This means if you went to cast Thoughtweft Trio, and your opponent removed the only other Kithkin on your board, suddenly you were getting 2 for 1 after spending 4 mana and a card on the trio. This made champion cards liabilities in gameplay. Instead of throwing the idea out entirely though, they revisited it as Behold. With Behold, you can just show a creature from your hand or battlefield. In Lorwyn Eclipsed, sometimes this also exiles it temporarily, but the ability to use fodder in your hand is a huge change, since you don't have to have developed before you cast your threat. Also, this is a cost, not an effect, so you can't be 2 for 1 in response. Behold captures the spirit of Champion, but it avoids the headache. How the mechanics interact with each other also shows a lot of foresight. -1/-1 counters are a theme all on their own. Many creatures enter with multiple counters, and it's not too hard to design payoffs for either putting counters onto opposing creatures or killing creatures already saddled with them. They could call it a day here with a standalone mechanic, but they didn't. Lorwyn Eclipsed is coming packaged with Persist and Blight as well. Persist lets creatures get a second life, using -1/-1 counters as a tracker, and Blight gives you additional benefits for putting those counters onto your own creatures. This leads to additional options in deck construction, and more depth of gameplay. If your opponent has a Persist creature on board, you can stick a -1/-1 counter onto them to preemptively negate the ability. Another example are Changelings, which are every creature type. They support Kindred and Behold in a similar way. In Draft, this design philosophy incentivizes splashing for more colors than you otherwise would. Convoke, for instance, is a heavily blue and white mechanic in this set, and those colors can also produce a lot of creature tokens, but so does green. The conventional wisdom, while drafting, is that you should usually stick to 2 colors for consistency's sake. This set has shown, though, to have some rewards and incentives to shake this up and maybe go for a third. Outside of overarching mechanics, Restraint was shown in the individual card designs. Even the set's best cards, although pushed, don't seem like they're going to be must-buy format ruiners. Bitterbloom Bearer gives fairies another Bitter Blossom, but I can't see this overthrowing Izzet Lessons as the kingpin. We are getting the shock lands back in Standard, but this is actually necessary rather than broken. Half of them have already been reprinted, leaving some colors without proper mana. Even Hexing Squelcher is looking to be a possible problem for only one format, and hopefully it's a little overhyped. This is a risky move from a company perspective. Printing broken cards helps incentivize people to buy packs, but it pushes power creep further. When you introduce especially powerful cards into a format, you are trading the format's health in exchange for sales. In Lorwyn Eclipsed, WotC and Hasbro appear to be pushing against that, and I appreciate that decision. Speaking of taking a risk, this set, in and of itself, was a risk to make. It's not a hat set. What I mean by hat set is, there have been a lot of sets recently that feel as if they can be boiled down to a very simple, transparent concept. Aether Drift, for example, is Magic's racing set. You take some beloved characters and slap them into cars with some goggles on. Then you layer that with some paper-thin references to popular media. Murders at Karlov Manor was Ravnica with detectives. These sets seem, conceptually, to be loosely expanded upon elevator pitches, as opposed to earnest attempts to build a world. They're easy to explain to investors, and for that reason, likely easier projects to get off the ground than novel sets. Now let's try that with Lorwyn. Okay, so it's like loosely Celtic mythology, but with a bit of gritty fable thing that goes on, but you also have this massive thing where the plane is continuously shifting back and forth between night and day, and everyone has different versions of themselves depending on which side they're on, and... So yeah, a bit more complicated than your standard hat set. This setting also has a bit of a reputation. The first visit to Lorwyn was not especially profitable. Although people liked the setting, the packs just didn't sell very well. I wouldn't be surprised if this was looked at internally as a bit of a rough patch for the game, especially considering it was 4 sets in a row. In the interim, it has gained a reputation as a beloved set, but that's not how it looked from a company sales perspective. For similar reasons to why we never revisited Homelands and Algrotha, we might have never gone back to Lorwyn. So imagine being in a lead design role. Your task is to come up with a set concept to present to both senior staff and investors. So you come out swinging with, okay, so it's a pretty nuanced and complex setting that didn't sell very well the first time, but the fans love it. That takes some serious guts, and someone did that. This set was a chance taken in hopes of making players happy, and I appreciate that. Lorwyn also seems to have a really healthy relationship with spoilers. I know we went over this quite a bit in my previous video, so here's a real quick summary of my thoughts. Spoilers have become very, very taxing to keep up with. It feels like we're constantly in a deluge of new cards and designs being rained down on us as we grasp for a moment to breathe. Lorwyn's spoilers, on the other hand, were handled in a way that was very digestible. It had a couple teasers released when the set was announced, which gave us a taste of the set and set some expectations for the mechanics. Then there was a large gap in the spoilers, until just recently, where they've been giving us more in the month leading to the release. This was a great compromise that, if implemented for all sets, would actually give us downtime between spoiler seasons. I have heard, since posting that video, that there's a possibility that this was not intended. Instead, it may have been the result of a slow in spoiler production due to holidays and worker vacations. I hope that this isn't the case, but even if it is, I feel like it's important to give the team props. If I'm going to bash WotC for oopsing their way into the design mistake that was Nadu, then it's only fair to praise them for oopsing into a good, healthy spoiler schedule. Regardless of the reason for it though, this was a welcome change that I hope to see return. The art for this set is absolutely stunning. I realize that we're entering the realm of the hyper-subjective here though, so I'm going to try to steer away from just gushing over it and instead attempt to say something of substance. Lorwyn Eclipsed has incredibly unique art. As Magic the Gathering has grown and evolved, over time it has gradually cultivated a certain identifiable art style. You know it, it's like this. It's a style of usually digital art with a fairly soft lighting that makes characters, especially humanoid ones, stand out and look sleek. I don't mean for this to sound like a dig at the artist. In fact, I love Liesa Taiwan's art, especially their composition. Archfiend of the Dross and Lightning Phoenix are great examples of their ability to turn things up to 11 when the need arises. I think that the gradual homogenization of the art styles for cards is probably strongly influenced by art direction. Either the directors select artists with a portfolio already aligning with Magic's general art style, or they hire a wide range of talented artists and direct them in such a way where the final product looks a bit more similar. This isn't without reason, of course. When someone cracks open a pack, as the art director, you probably want them to easily recognize that they're looking at Magic cards. But I think a big shakeup every now and then can be good for the game's artwork. And oh boy is Lorwyn a shakeup. Blossom Blind is watery and painterly, Bloodline Bidding is hectic and looks like something out of Innistrad, Bree is playful but grounded, while cards like Brigid's Command show something conceptual rather than real. The directors here are letting the artists completely off the leash, and the set looks beautiful for it. Seriously, if you haven't just gone to Scryfall and scrolled through the arts for Lorwyn Eclipsed, do yourself a favor and make some time to. I'm constantly finding masterpieces at Common. I think part of this is actually influenced by mechanics, funnily enough. Lorwyn has its focus on non-human creatures. Kithkin have these strange oval heads, elementals have exposed skeletal ribs, fairies are very Spiderwick Chronicles with their insectoid appendages, and even the elves, which are probably closest to humanity in anatomy, have animal features and horns. With the plains population this departed from the familiar, I think it becomes easier to embrace variety in visuals, especially when it features creatures. There's also a number of returning, historic magic artists. While I was scrolling the art suite, my eye was drawn to Chomping Changeling. I thought, oh wow, that would be right at home next to the old show and tell art. Then I looked at the artist, Jeff Laubenstein, and yeah, sure enough, he's the guy who painted show and tell. And it's not just him. Jesper Ising is of course here, but we also have Richard Kane Ferguson, Omar Ryan, Steve Prescott, Wayne Reynolds, and yes, the grand return of Rebecca Gay. They're not just returning though, everyone's pulling out the big guns with their iconic styles. This is a celebration of Magic's history in more ways than just returning to a beloved setting. My eye is constantly drawn back to Dawn Blessed Pennant. This isn't from an old school artist, Igor's first Magic art looks like it was from Midnight Hunt, but it still feels like it would be right at home in the game's early years. I realize, at the end of the day, enjoyment of art is subjective, but I don't know, it just feels like there's something special here. So, at risk of being called a shill, I think I'm loving Lorwyn Eclipsed. Hasbro has made it pretty clear that they're interested in one thing, doing what works. And if I appreciate what great strides this set has made in the direction I would like to see Magic go, then I suppose it's in my interest to support that. I never thought I'd find myself gushing wholeheartedly over something out of 2026, but I guess miracles do happen. If you're as stoked as I am about Lorwyn, or noticed something to criticize about the set that I overlooked, then please, share that in the comments below, along with your favorite artwork from it. If you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate it if you liked it and shared it around with your friends. Maybe if I was convincing enough, this video could be what sets you guys up for a draft pod on release. If you enjoy the format of these videos, consider subscribing to be notified when I upload. If you want to talk to me directly, I have a Discord server, where we chat and get together for games of Magic. Lastly, I have a Blue Sky that I use mostly to bother other Magic YouTubers. Follow me there to see me do that. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.